Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Canedo. A new state law allows California residents to get a gun restraining order against immediate family members they believe are a danger to themselves or others. CSUN students say the issue of gun control is controversial.
Well, I think it's good that they created this law because it's actually going to help in case you know somebody that's crazy or something like that and knows a lot of guns. It's going to be like a great way to tell them in.
I think it's in violation of your constitutional right. It's good and bad, but I think it's definitely in violation of it.
Okay, and how would you react if you had a friend that was suspicious? Would you be going to the police? Why or why not?
I think I think this is where the law gets a little sticky because I think you would have to because you'd take into account the lives of others.
I think that we need more gun laws because we just have a lot of unnecessary shootings. So I like that they're imposing more gun laws, actually, and I wish they would be more strict with it.
Well, I mean, it's a violation of rights, but it's for the safety of people. So I think it'll be a good thing that there's something being done before, you know, something really bad actually happens. So it's a good thing, but I don't know, a lot of people might oppose it because of the fact that it's a violation of their right.
Ventura County firearm and security expert Danny Charrier disagrees with part of the new bill.
And the only problem I really see with that is that there's going to be two sides to every story. And you know, the same thing goes with almost every other gun bill. You know, a lot of people think that guns are the issue, and it's really not the issue, it's the person. So as far as taking away somebody's Second Amendment rights because of something they did, as long as that remains an individual issue for that case, that's not as big of a deal as when they're trying to take it away from everybody. Because it's, you know, if somebody gets in a car accident, they don't blame the car, but if there's a shooting, they blame the gun, and that's been going on for years. So as far as the new bill is concerned, I think it's a step in the right direction as far as gun control, but you know, anything that's going to threaten law-abiding citizens shouldn't be allowed.
In 1999, the Granada Hills Jewish Community Center shooting resulted in 5 injuries and 1 death. Incidents of gun violence have struck on and off campuses since then. On Point's Ken Harvey has more on the story.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm here with Craig Renetzky, a former deputy district attorney who has tried over 100 cases to jury trial verdicts, and Josh Stepakoff, a CSUN student, spokesperson for Women Against Gun Violence, and survivor of the 1999 Granada Hills Jewish Community Center shooting. Thank you guys for being here today.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks. All right, to start, do you think this law could have prevented the Isla Vista shooting? And Craig, I'd like to start with you.
I don't think the law itself would have prevented it. It certainly could help, but I firmly believe that if someone wants to commit violence, they'll commit violence.
Okay. How about you, Josh?
I mean, it's all hearsay, and it's easy to speculate now. I like to think that the law could have prevented it because it has been seen that his family was highly concerned about his well-being, and so it could have potentially been reported and firearms could have been taken from his home. But as Craig said, there's, you know, if you want to do it, you're going to find a way to do it.
Okay. Craig, can you explain the practical application of this law?
Well, essentially, if the police have reason to believe that an act of gun violence is going to occur, they can ask a judge for an emergency order that would allow them to seize the guns for up to 21 days before a full hearing would have to take place in court. Once that full hearing takes place, the judge can make a determination whether to continue it or not.
And as a lot of people know, under the Second Amendment, everybody has a right to bear arms. Well, most people. Can you explain kind of like the conflict between the right to bear arms and this law? Well,
because it's a constitutional protection, you have the right to bear arms. It can only be taken away if the government can show a very, very strong reason to do so. For example, if you're convicted of a felon, you can lose that right. If you are a mental patient, you can lose that right. There's certain circumstances where the government can actually come in and say, no, you can't carry a gun anymore, you can't have a gun. This basically allows for that to take place, but again, it has to meet a certain threshold of a test before the government can come in and take those guns away.
Can you expand on what the law means by documentary evidence?
It can't be basically rumor or innuendo. What the government does not want, and what a lot of people that wrote this bill did not want, was the, hey, so-and-so's gonna hurt me. They want something that can be substantiated, because this could be used basically in revenge. I want to get so-and-so's guns away from him. Watch how I do it. I go to the police and say, hey, I heard he was planning something. They want to make sure they're only doing it in cases where it's a real threat, not just a possible or a imaginary threat.
California's gun control laws received an A- grade from both the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence and the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, and that was before Bill 1014. The shooter passed a federal background check in the case of the Isla Vista shooting, and he met several other requirements in a state with some of the toughest gun control laws in the country. A lot of people are wondering, are we moving away from the Second Amendment with this law? And I'd like to start with you again.
I'm concerned more than anything about the fact that you could have a situation where someone loses their constitutionally protected right to bear arms for 21 days before they get a hearing before a judge. Even though there's an initial determination by a judge, the other party who's losing the guns does not have the right for those 21 days to have seen a judge. That concerns me. It's a long time. Domestic violence in California, it's 7 days from an emergency protective order until you have a right to a hearing. 21 days is a long time to have a constitutional right taken away.
Okay. And would you be able to explain a little bit, after someone's guns are taken away after the 21 days, the restraining order is renewed in yearly increments? Do you know a little bit about what might go into that?
Well, I imagine what would be a full hearing where the person could go to court and contest the findings, present evidence. Let's say I have someone that disliked me and made the threat. During the hearing, I could perhaps present evidence to say this was just a way of getting back at me, that the order shouldn't be issued, and the judge could then stop it.
Okay. There are more guns in the hands of citizens in the USA than any other country, according to a small arms survey from 2007. On average, the survey found 88.8 guns per 100 people in the USA, compared with 54.8 per 100 residents in Yemen and 45.7 per 100 in Switzerland. Are these shootings caused by a gun culture in America? And actually, Josh, I want to start with you.
It's a difficult question. I personally feel that with the increased number of guns, you have an increased risk of these sorts of gun violence attacks. But at the same time, it kind of raises question as to the people who say that owning a firearm is going to keep you safe. You know, if you have a gun, then you're able to protect yourself. Well, here we are in a country with more guns than any other nation per person or per 100 people, and yet we still have, I believe, the highest death rate from gun violence each year. So I do think that the amount of guns per people or per person is detrimental to trying to move forward. So.
Craig, what's your response to that?
I don't know that it's a problem with guns. I think the problem that we're facing is much larger. I think it's a problem with mental health. I think that people are committing crimes with guns that they would perhaps be committing the same crime with a knife, a hand grenade, with something else other than a gun. I think we need to look at the underlying cause of the violence, not the tool that's being used to carry out that violence.
Okay. In a country like Germany, the right to private gun ownership is not guaranteed by law. Should owning a gun be an inalienable right?
It's in the Constitution. If we want to change it, we have to change the Constitution. As it stands now, we have that right. So I think it is. If the people of the United States feel that it shouldn't be, there's a political method they can go about to change that. And it's, interestingly enough, it's the Second Amendment. So it obviously was considered by our founders to be an important one.
What do you think the founders meant by the right to bear arms in the Second Amendment? Because I know a lot of people have differing opinions about their true intention.
There's definitely multiple camps in that. My interpretation is that they were scared of the government having all the power, of the government being the only ones to have guns. I don't think they necessarily meant that we should be able to have a homemade rocket launcher. I don't think they wanted to go that far. But I think the idea of an average law-abiding citizen being able to possess a gun was clearly what they meant.
So would the same be said for something like assault rifles that people have? Or do you think that where does the line get drawn at?
I don't know. That's a tough question. It's hard to put an exact point on where it is. I believe that they're within their right. The government is definitely within the right to restrict guns. I think even your largest organizations like the NRA would not necessarily advocate convicted felons for being able to run around with guns. Certain people should not have guns. The question is who it is and where we draw the line. Like my problem with this law, really more than anything, is the 21-day waiting period. It's a long time.
It's often said that people kill people and guns don't kill people. Instead of legislating guns, we should focus more on people. Does this law kind of address both of those? And I would like to start with you again.
I don't think this law does anything to solve the underlying problem. Mental health problem has basically been ignored. We used to simply throw people that had mental health problems into mental health facilities and we'd leave them there forever. Nowadays we throw them into jails. We have not addressed the underlying problem with the mental health system, and until we do that, addressing the gun issue is just delaying the inevitable. What next? Ban knives, ban pea shooters? I mean, we have to deal with the underlying problem.
Okay. I would like to pull up a new law that's taking place in Texas, or is being proposed in Texas, that says basically an educator can use deadly force on a student in defense of themselves or their other students in the classroom. I would like to start with you, Josh, on that. How do you feel about this law?
It's, in my opinion, ridiculous. I don't think that this level of paranoia that we're really kind of pushing everyone into is necessary. I don't think that parents need to drop their kids off at school thinking that there's the potential for their kid to be killed. You know, and from my own personal experience, I can absolutely guarantee that if somebody was there with a gun to protect me, they wouldn't have been able to in time. People can argue it all they want, but it comes down to your response in a traumatic situation, and police officers who have been trained for many, many years can barely make the right move in a tragic situation. So I really don't think that somebody who is ill-trained can act properly in this situation with a firearm. And in fact, I think that they'll end up hurting more people than they would have saved.
And Craig, as an educator, how do you feel about this law?
Well, looking at the law just from a legal perspective, it basically says that a teacher has the right to exercise, use a deadly weapon in defense of themselves or others, and that's the state of the law as it is in every state, is my understanding. Self-defense. Even in California, if somebody was to be using deadly force against me, I'm allowed to return and use deadly force to protect myself or others. So I don't know that the law in Texas is very different than the law in California and many other states.
Okay.
But I think the concern is that it's in schools. And that's my main concern, is that, you know, it's leaving the potential life of an individual to the judgment of a person who is trained to teach, not to make split-second decisions on life or death or a potentially deadly situation. I don't think that there's a place for guns in schools. I don't think that there's a place for violence in schools. You know, and we're already seeing it a bunch recently with the Eric Garner stories and stuff like that, where police officers can't even handle themselves properly in a stressful situation. So I don't think we should be placing that trust into people who have yet to have the proper training. And from my knowledge, there's no training that comes along with you know, these teachers being able to potentially hold a deadly weapon in their hand. And I see a problem with that.
Okay. There are more mass shootings in restaurants than schools, but nobody's really calling for weight persons or waiters to carry guns. Children are almost 100 times more likely to be murdered outside of school than at school. So do you think that we kind of have a skewed perception of school shootings, Josh?
I think they're more widely publicized because it's so unexpected. But, you know, all it takes is for one newscaster to step back and publish a story about a shooting that happens in an average neighborhood as opposed to one that's happening at a school. I think the reason that the school shootings are more publicized is because they're usually a lot more fatal, and they're affecting children who are in the right place at the right time, doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, as was I when I got shot.
Yeah. You survived that shooting, and it turned you into an advocate for gun safety. I spoke with another survivor, Scott Engler, who has counseled teens and young children. Let's take a look at that. How do you think the mental health community has failed these shooters?
I don't know if it's the mental health community that's failed the shooters. I think it's just people around them that didn't really know. I wouldn't say there's as much someone to blame as the fact that people might see these weird type of behaviors and really not know that they need to see a therapist. Maybe someone likes to shoot birds with a BB gun all the time, and it could look a little bit more normal to kids. You know, it's not always just in your face. A lot of these kids were probably very, you know, especially the shooters we're talking about, probably weren't the most social people, and so they were isolated a lot, so people weren't really seeing what was going on behind closed doors. So it's not always that easy to see, here were the, you know, the warning signs, and what could we do differently.
So we're in a park now. There are kids over there playing earlier. The bill was created in order to help protect them.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of the Isla Vista shooter, his parents went to the police before he did anything, and the police said that he didn't exhibit any characteristics that were out of the ordinary.
Mm.
How do we address people who seem, as many people will say, normal?
That's a great point, and I actually did speak to some parents in the community of Santa Barbara about that exact point you brought up. My opinion is that a lot of times mass murderers, or even anyone that's doing any type of delinquent type behavior, could really become sociopathic or just really cover up well, right? They could be very manipulative, and so because cops don't have a background in psychology, you know, they have experience working with people that are obviously being delinquents, it would be helpful, in my opinion, to have someone on the force that is more trained in profiling and has a therapy background, so they could really see things more clearly and be able to say, listen, you know, I know that person seemed normal when you went to his house, but here's what I observed, and this is what I would like to do, you know.
Why do you think people take a gun and decide that they want to shoot children?
Because they're getting the attention and everything, that shock value that they were seeking. They obviously felt very repressed in some area maybe, and they just, you know, maybe they were bullied. There's just kind of this repression in some area. I think that part of it is just that when things blow up on media attention, that they're actually getting positively reinforced for what they wanted to begin with, was more attention and, you know, just to be validated in some way.
Any final thoughts on gun violence?
And so rather than saying that everyone that owns a gun is bad, or that everyone that does this is bad, because there's plenty of people that do this that are responsible, it's just really looking at these people and doing a more thorough assessment of the root causes of why this stuff is happening, and providing alternative methods to help these people versus just not giving them a gun.
So I know you were Josh Stepakoff's junior counselor at the Jewish Community Center in 1999. Can you tell me about your experience in that shooting?
All I remember is just seeing just the look of these people's faces running down the hill in shock. And you know, we had no idea what happened. We were waiting on the field for them by the bus. And so just to see this look of like death and terror, you know, was crazy. And I think, you know, what I remember was equally as scary and difficult. You know, I think I was 16 years old at the time, was our campers in our immediate group were the ones that got shot. And so when we went to this park to hide out, campers were asking us, where's Josh, where's Ben? And we didn't know what to tell them. We didn't even know what was going on at that time. So it was just a very obviously intense, scary, traumatic situation, and that was my experience of it. just nothing you would ever expect to happen during the day on a regular day of summer camp.
Josh, how do you find closure after something like that?
You don't. There is no closure. This has continued to be a main factor and part of my life for the past 15 years, and I know that it will for the rest of my life. It'll always be part of who I am, and it will always have a large effect on the person that I've become.
You told me that what you survived was similar to the Sandy Hook shooting. Can you kind of discuss the parallels between that and Sandy Hook?
So obviously Sandy Hook was much, much worse than when I got shot, and it was just the images that came afterwards that all of a sudden was like deja vu. These pictures of kids being led in a daisy chain by armed police officers to safety are exact same pictures from the shooting in 1999. The fact that it was little kids around the age of 6 who were targeted. Those are some of the main parallels, but it's just a lot of the setting was very similar, and just the targets were similar.
Okay. Do you think the person who shot you was evil, a terrorist, or mentally ill?
He was definitely mentally ill, and that was known and on record. I wouldn't call him a terrorist. He was mentally challenged, and he was a known neo-Nazi, and he was a known domestic abuser. But he had his motives, and he was, in his eyes, sent out on a mission to kill Jews. And this was his wake-up call to America, to kill Jews. So that, to me, is a clear sign of mental illness and just not being really all there and not really thinking through the actions and the ideas that he's trying to set forth.
What do you think happens to someone in their life that would make them want to kill an innocent person?
I honestly can't answer that. I don't know what could ever make somebody want to end someone else's life. I've never experienced hate like that. You know, I just can't imagine thinking to myself, like, I legitimately want that person dead and out of the world. So I can't answer that question.
And as you said, you thought that the person who shot you was mentally ill. How do you think the mental health community has just failed all of these shooters?
I don't think that mental health programs are as ready and available as they should be. There's a lot of people out there who struggle with mental illnesses, and they can't find help either because it's too expensive or they just don't know about it. There's not a lot of public programs for mental health patients, and so I wouldn't say that they've been failed, but it's just not as easy to find mental health help as it is to find help for other issues. And so I think that's a room for a large improvement.
Craig, I know you feel really strongly about the issue. What's your response to that?
I think absolutely. I think the mental health system's failed. If you take a look at all of these mass shootings, if guns weren't available and the person has mental health problems, they could take a car and run people over. We've seen that. They can build a fertilizer bomb and blow up buildings. We need to get to the root cause of the problem, which is the mental health system. We are too reactive. Every time someone uses a tool to kill someone or harm someone, we want to legislate against that, but we're never getting to the root cause of the problem, which means we're never going to solve the problem.
Okay. Briefly, can you each kind of describe for me what you think is the situation, or I'm sorry, is the solution for the problem of gun violence? I'll start with you, Josh.
You say it as though it's a black and white, clear-cut answer, and there's a lot of things that need to be worked on. The mental health system is a large one. I think that universal background checks can absolutely be helpful, because if we have a mental health system that is accurately checking people who are applying to purchase firearms, we'd have a lot better idea of who's actually purchasing the firearms. And there would be people like the man who shot me would not have been able to purchase a firearm. The gun show loophole should be closed, because as of right now, that allows people to purchase out of a private collection without paperwork, background checks, taxes. All you need is to show a valid ID that you live in that state. It's been shown that you really don't even need that to purchase the firearms, and you know, these people aren't licensed firearm dealers, and so that those sales go highly unregulated. There's a lot of small things that need to be done, and really, I think the most important thing is to just educate society about safe gun storage, safe gun laws, safe handling of firearms. It's not about taking guns away from everybody. It's about keeping your guns locked when they're at home, not keeping them loaded underneath your pillow, you know?
Okay.
So I think what it really comes down to is just education.
Okay, and Craig, what about you?
I think he's right with most of what he said. I think if you look at the vast majority of Americans, we are able to own and possess a gun, and we don't shoot anybody. That, to me, means the gun is not the problem. The problem is everything else. It's the problem of some people have guns that shouldn't have guns. It's the problem that people aren't getting the health treatment, the mental health treatment that they need. There's no simple Band-Aid solution to this. And I think we as a society have to realize that and look at the problem as a big problem and find the right approach, but not just try to put a piece of gum in every time a little hole breaks loose. And that's what we do. We're very reactive, and we need to be proactive.
All right. Well, thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
No more pencils, no more books, no more teachers, dirty looks.
School's out!
For summer.
What this place needed was better graduation rates. So we worked with schools like Henry Ford High, and now they're up 18%. To help us do more good this year, go to unitedway.org, because great things happen when we live united.
Thank you for tuning in to On Point. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CSUN On Point. You can watch the show on channel LA36 every Sunday morning at 11:30. You can hear the show every Sunday morning at 5:30 on KCSN FM 88.5. For all of us here on Point, I'm Crystal Canedo.